Peter King here on the Rich Eisen Show, and you had Mickey Loomis on your podcast, him saying how he'd be personally in favor of delaying the draft, which went all sorts of viral. Certainly it landed, as it appears, as with a thud on the desk of Commissioner Roger Goodell. I'm wondering where all that sentiment resides right now in the NFL community.
Well, I think there's a lot of people, a lot of front office people, GM types, who were not happy with Roger Goodell because this was not a time, in my opinion, to be relatively autocratic, which Roger Goodell was. This was a time to come out and say, hey, look, we understand this is a tough time for all general managers in this league, for all scouts in this league. Because, Rich, right now, this week, quite literally, starting on March 30th is when several teams in this league, and I think it's probably more than several, we're going to start like 2 weeks of draft meetings in which they would finalize their board. They'd get their board finished. And now they haven't been able to do anything out of a sense of normalcy for the last month. And now, clearly, nothing is going to be normal over the next 3 weeks before the draft. And I think sometimes, Roger Goodell has gotten more and more removed from a lot of sort of the common people in the league recently. This is the NFL's 100th season. He was absolutely invisible all year. Nobody saw him. If he made 5 public appearances, I can't even name them. But normally, Roger Goodell is a guy who, in his tenure, when he goes to a game, he walks through the parking lot sometimes or speaks to some fan groups or whatever. And it's possible he did this year in abundance. I certainly didn't hear about very much of it. And look, whatever you think of the job he did or whatever, in my opinion, had I been advising Roger Goodell, I would have said, hey, pick up the phone, call Mickey Loomis, call 10 general managers and say, hey, I know this is tough. Or have a conference call with them and say, hey, I'm sorry, I feel for you guys. This is a hard way to go, but we got to do this draft. Now, could he have reached out to a couple, 3, 4, 5? I have not heard of that, and maybe he could have. But in my opinion, one of the reasons that a lot of general managers and football people in the league feel enmity right now toward the league office is they feel like they're not listened to.
Well, we're kind of recreating the conversation you and I had on the phone last week where, I heard that and I'm like, wow, I didn't really consider all that because I'm just talking about where I am from my chair, talking to fans and hearing from fans and where I would be in my chair for a draft. I know you mentioned how it would be maybe an ESPN-only event that would be over a lot of people at the NFL networks, if you will. There would be an issue. I think
dead bodies.
Well, I don't want to use that word obviously in this day and age, but you know what I'm saying. Like it would be very difficult for all of us to handle all that. But these are unique times, man. Like, and that's what I said. With all the scouts and the general managers, and I know that they're not doing it the way that they normally would do it, and I understand their livelihoods are on the line if they don't get it right. Usually. But if things are in this country necessary for the fans to get some form of a distraction, what 3-day event could there possibly be at all in the sports world that comes remotely close to this? We're talking about a Jordan documentary being something to celebrate, being moved up by 2 months. So, we talk about adversity in the third and the fourth quarters and how you have to adapt, and you have maybe it's time for the scouting and general manager departments to adapt and do it.
They are, Rich.
Right?
And I believe that, I talked to like 4 or 5 of them this weekend, and nobody is bitching and moaning right now. It's simply, and I don't mean, oh, you poor guys, and give them a pat on the back. I just mean, talk to them, talk to them, show a little bit of empathy. And just this league office has not been able to do that. And again, maybe they've done it behind closed doors. It's possible, but it's certainly not anything that I've heard about.